21 Savage just dropped one of the best rap albums this year, American Dream.
This is why we're here.
And the production sounds amazing. Today, we're gonna take a deep dive and look into what it is about this album's production that makes it so addictive. This album has a variety of different styles, which we'll get into later. But first, let's start off with that more hard, dark 21 Savage sounds heard on tracks like Red Rum and Nina.
I took a ballerina down to the ball dance.
As you could hear from both of those songs, that sampled sound is a huge part of the production on American Dream. And on both of those samples, one of the main instruments is that cinematic dark violin. So to start off our first beat, we're gonna need some violins. So I opened up this VST called Hollywood Strings from East West, and also this lead violin VST called Spitfire Solo Violin, and I wrote this progression. And before we move on, I want to explain one key thing in this MIDI pattern that makes it sound so much more dark and cinematic. All of these notes right here are inside the C natural minor scale. But at the very end right here, I go out of the natural minor scale into the harmonic minor scale by putting this one out of key note that's one half step down from that C sharp, so a C. So if you listen to how this pattern kind of ends and resolves, it sounds super eerie and creepy. So if you want to spice it up a little bit, mess around with putting an out of key note every once in a while. And this already sounds cool, but those VSTs aren't gonna cut it if we want to have that luxurious, authentic violin sound like the intro to Red Rum. So instead of just using the VSTs, I actually hired a session musician to replay my melody on his real violin, and it sounds like this. And this is definitely a step up. The violin sounds a lot more authentic already, but it feels kind of empty. I want this to feel huge and cinematic, and I felt like those VST strings had a little bit more of that big kind of nature, but they were just lacking that authentic texture to them. So I layered the big VST strings back underneath the live violins, and it came out crazy. From here, I exported that whole thing as an audio file into my brand new kit, Elements of Trap. And really quick, this kit is insane if you want to make these dark 21 Savage style beats. It comes with over 2,000 samples, live violin phrases, live flute phrases, just like the ones I just played, hard-hitting drums, and so much more. If you want to check it out, it'll be the first link in the description down below. But anyways, I dragged this starter from the kit into a brand new project file so that I could flip it into a crazy trap beat. And the first thing that I needed to do was chop it up. If you listen to Red Rum and Nina, they both have super cinematic and beautiful intros that drop into a more repetitive sample chop.
Hey, Brady 7-pack, they come in bunch.
And making this repetitive section of the sample chop makes it a lot easier to rap on and also makes it a lot catchier. So I did the same exact thing and I let the strings play for the intro as they were, and then I chopped the first bar to play 3 times in a row before a 4th chop comes in to break the repetitiveness at the end of each pattern. Another thing they did in Red Rum to make the beat more interesting was for different sections, they reversed the sample chop so it has a little bit more variety and it's not so boring and repetitive. So to change up our violin chop, instead of reversing it, I added a half speed for a second section. Once I had this, the core idea was pretty much done. I just wanted to spice it up and fill it out a little bit. So I grabbed Keyscape and laid down this simple piano pattern. I layered that in with the violin and the loop was pretty much done. But there was one key thing that was missing to make this sound like an authentic sample: texture. Like I said before, a big part of this American dream feeling are those 60s and 70s sounding samples. And back then when these samples were made, they were actually recording their songs onto tape. So I took this whole sample and I ran it through my 1978 reel-to-reel tape recorder. But before I play the whole finished sample, take a listen to the before and after on how the tape transforms this sound. So as you can tell, that sounds a lot more vintage and almost a little bit more realistic. So I did that for every single sound in the loop, and once I did that, we get the final sample. Now, all we need to do is add some simple hard-hitting drums like the ones on Nina. And when I listen to these drums, I can hear a few things. First off, the hi-hat is super simple, but it has these super fire 16th note rolls, which has been something that Metro Boomin has been using all the time in his recent beats.
They gon' try, we 100 deep like Verizon. In the trees with the bumblebees on horizon and catching Z's.
So to start off our beat, I put down these simple hi-hats with a couple 16th note rolls. The second thing I noticed was how fire the bounce between the kick and the clap was on Nina.
Driving through the liquor store, faded, braided, hands in this motherfucker waving.
So I took inspiration from that bouncy pattern and I got this. From there, I added this subby 808 like the one on Red Rum and Nina. And to finish it off, I really loved how the open hats on Red Rum added a ton of energy to the beat. So I added 2 different open hats to help spice up and finish the drums. Now that the drums are all finished, the full beat is sounding insane. I love this intro. Now that sounds pretty sick, but another huge part of 21's American Dream production is the more R&B and soulful side of the album, on songs like Should've Wore a Bonnet, Dark Days, and Letter to My Brother. And it's no secret that 21 Savage is a huge fan of old soul and R&B songs.
That I will always looking in your eyes, and your love ain't going away.
Luckily for me, I was actually fortunate enough to help produce on 2 of these more emotional songs on American Dream, Letter to My Brother and Dark Days. So for this next beat, I'm gonna be taking some inspiration from Letter to My Brother.
Father God, forgive me for my sins. Take the mask off all my enemies that's out here acting like my friends.
As you can hear, the foundation for the melody on this song is a piano. So to recreate this, I opened up an upright piano from Keyscape and put down this super simple chord progression. And this sounds okay, it's a nice starting point. But one of the key parts to the melody on Letter to My Brother are those high walking down notes on the piano. Shout out my boy G06 for adding those. So to take some inspiration from that, I added these walk downs going from chord to chord and duplicated them over 3 octaves to make them sound super big and luxurious. From here, I needed to fill this melody out a little bit more to bring that soulful energy to life. So I copied those chords onto 3 different instruments: an electric piano from Keyscape, some choir vocals from East West backup singers, and some Mellotron violins. And when you compare the before and after of adding these layers, you can see why layering is a huge part to making that soulful sample feeling like the one on Letter to My Brother. Now we have a super great foundation for our soulful sample. But the catchiest part of Letter to My Brother and Dark Days are those soulful vocal chops. And since I worked on both of these songs, I can tell you with 100% confidence that these vocals came from my Soul Vocals kits that I put out a while ago with a vocalist named Paula. So to recreate that same vibe, I went right back into those Soul Vocal kits and grabbed these vocal riffs. Now that we've got all of that, the last thing that I wanted to do is add some live bass, some acoustic drums, and some textures to just bring that sampled feeling to life. So we could stop here. The sample is pretty much finished. But like I said earlier, a huge reason that the production on this album sounds so good is because of that vintage texture on those samples mixed with those hard-hitting modern drums. So I ran this whole loop back through my tape machine just like I did on the first sample, and here's the before and after. Now that our melody is done, it's time to add some hard-hitting drums. So let's take a listen to the drums on Letter to My Brother.
Once you cross that line, it ain't no trying to fix it. You want me to forgive you, let's be realistic.
You can tell that these aren't your normal trap drums that you would hear 21 on. They have a super live and real feeling to them, which I think adds a lot to this album. And the easiest way to get that kind of bounce is by using a real live hi-hat loop. So I grabbed 2 of these percussion loops from the Elements of Trap drum kit and got this. Next up, we need a hard-hitting kick and rim shot. And to finish it off, if you listen closely to the drums on Letter to My Brother, you can hear that there's also some subtle snare fills that add to that human bounce. So I added these subtle bounce snares on top of our drums and got this. And once I had that, the beat was done. No need to add an 808 or anything, which is kind of funny because both the songs I got with 21 Savage, who always uses hard 808s in his beats, neither of them have an 808. But I think the choice to leave out an 808 and just let the bass guitar act as the bass for the song really adds to that more emotional kind of vibe and gives the album a little bit more diversity. Anyways, now that the drums are done, here's the finished beat. Want to cook up some crazy hard trap beats like the first one we made in this video, make sure you don't sleep and check out the Elements of Trap kit in the link down below. It's going to be on a huge discount, but only for a limited time. But that's all for me. Peace.